proceed to questions. Each senator will have 5 minutes to ask questions per round, and we'll alternate between Republicans and Democrats in order of seniority subject to the early bird rule. And as I mentioned earlier, Ranking Member Durbin has had a conflict, so when he arrives, we'll hope to hear his opening statement as well. Mr. Sarandos, why don't we start with you, if that's all right? Now, Netflix, under current conditions, that is pre-merger status quo Netflix, it produces and distributes its own scripted long-form, full-length feature films, TV shows, documentaries, and series, correct?
Thank you, Senator Lee. Yes, that is correct. We do produce. It is a small portion of our title offering.
But it's part of your library.
Part of our library, yes.
In fact, it plans to invest roughly $20 billion annually, separate and apart from the merger, in order to increase production, adding to its portfolio. Is that right?
Production and licensing, correct,
Yes.
sir, yes.
So if Netflix already produces content and plans to increase production, increase that investment on new production, regardless of the merger, tell me why you want to make this acquisition with a competing content producer and a competing streaming platform.
Well, today, Warner Brothers is both a competitor and a supplier. And our history, the reason I walked through that little history in the opening was that our history and my own professional history has been about adding more and more value to consumers.
Right.
And you do that by adding more choice. And to do that, it requires a great deal of volume of production and a volume of licensing, which we do today. I would say, too...
By supplier, you're referring to the fact that through licensing arrangements, you already...
Correct. We license television series and film
well, you don't really air. You stream some of their content.
Correct. In movies in various windows, and in original series and licensed series as well.
Now, YouTube does not invest in producing original content, at least not in the same order of magnitude, not anywhere near what Netflix does. Is that right?
I can't speak to their specific economic impact. I know that they do not share the risk with the creators in doing that. They certainly step up, and we compete with them for things like that Academy Award deal, certainly for the NFL football games they recently did with the NFL game in Brazil. Now, so yes, they do spend a great deal of money on content.
Now, YouTube does share advertising revenue with users, primarily, I believe, with users who do produce their own content. I assume you wouldn't disagree with that characterization. In other words,
Yes.
Most of regular YouTube, let's differentiate for a minute. YouTube from YouTube TV, which is a different thing altogether. It's a cable TV subscription. But YouTube, whether it's regular YouTube, streams free, doesn't require login credentials, doesn't require any subscription, unless you want to get YouTube Premium, which allows you to bypass the ads attached to the streaming device, in which case you've got to pay a fee and have subscriber login credentials for that. They're not in the same business. They're not producing the same thing. Sure, they produce content, they share advertising revenue with creators, but these are more like sort of end user creators producing shorter content, not full feature length films typically. Isn't that right?
Well, Senator Lee, thank you. And I appreciate the complexity of all this, and I really can't speak to the inner workings of their model. It's not really that clear for folks. It's not that transparent.
But you would agree that YouTube content is free as a default matter, and as a default matter, it doesn't require either a paid subscription or login credentials, right?
Well, they are a subscription service that also has an ad-free and a subscription option, but it is the exact same content. And remember, when we talk about a competition, we're competing for the same content, we're competing for the same viewers, we're competing often for the same ad dollar, and sometimes it's the exact same programming. And in the case of YouTube creators themselves, this past weekend, a YouTube creator had a movie called The Iron Lung that put $17 million at the box office.
Okay, and I don't doubt that they sometimes have feature-length films on there, but I'm struggling to grasp, to fully understand what you're saying about how it's the exact same content. Is this content that is produced with, I don't know, the involvement of the Screenwriters Guild, content that is produced typically in a studio, where does most of the content on regular YouTube come from? Again, regular YouTube, not to be confused with YouTube TV.
Correct. And I would say I would point you to the comments of Neil, the CEO of YouTube, who just drew a point to the fact that YouTube creators are buying Hollywood studios and producing content at very competitive levels today, and he himself calls it TV. And I would say, what people also miss is about 50% of the engagement on YouTube today happens in the living room on a TV, not on. I think people largely think of YouTube as a mobile device service, and it is 50% today and growing very fast on television. And for Netflix, a very small percentage of our content is ever watched on a mobile device. It's primarily on television. And on that screen, sir, it is a zero-sum game. So if you're watching YouTube, you're not watching HBO Max, you're not watching Netflix, you're not watching CBS. So that is why when we talk about competing for the moment of choice, competing for the viewer's attention, competing for the ad dollars, competing for the subscription dollars, it is all the same pool of content and all the same pool of viewers.
Look, my time's expired, but just very briefly before we go to the next senator, I want to make sure that I understand what you're saying. Sure, you're choosing between this and something else in the same sense that if I'm watching anything on a screen, whether it's a small screen or a big screen on the wall, I'm not watching something else or doing something else. It competes. The two compete in the same sense that they compete for what else one might do in one's day, reorganize one's sock drawer, think about the Dormant Commerce Clause of the Constitution, or something else really fun like that. But it's not necessarily the same content. In fact, YouTube, regular YouTube, not to be confused with YouTube TV, which is like a cable subscription thing, the lion's share, the overwhelming share of what one consumes on YouTube while watching YouTube is not full-length feature films written by screenwriters produced by full studios, is it?
Are we okay on time for me to answer?
Well, yeah, just answer quickly, and then we'll go to Senator Schiff.
So the exact splits of what type of programming is seen on YouTube is not, again, there's no transparent reporting of the viewing except for what shows up as a view count on YouTube, unlike the other counts. But I would tell you that it is increasingly the exact same programming, meaning if you did not watch Saturday Night Live on Saturday night, you probably watched it on Sunday morning on YouTube.
Okay.
The exact same show.
I may want to get back to that in a subsequent round. Senator Schiff, you have the button.